Welcome to the factory of programming. Prepare your mind for exclusive tech experience. Listening to Vivo Bon right now.
Hello, today we will see how to use the test container, the framework, to test your integration test in containers with your Spring Boot application or any other application. And for this, we will check these different points. First, define what is this framework with the definition of testcontainers.com. Then ask ChatGPT a little example to have an idea of what it looks like. Then do check the demo app without test containers. Say I have already done an application, but it doesn't run with test containers. We will check how it is, and then we will modify this application with an example doing a testcontainers.com stuff with a Spring Boot. And in the end, once we have checked that our Spring Boot application run on containers for the integration test, we'll conclude with Reddit comments. So first, let's go to testcontainer.com to see the definition. Unit test with real dependency. The point is real. Test Container is an open source framework for providing throwaway, lightweight instance of database, message broker, web browser, or just about anything that can run in a Docker container. So the point it is that usually we use database that does not match with the real database in production. So here we will do this with real database, and then it is something that is that can be throwaway, which is the top for which is a good thing for our test, because the test just need to execute something and then to throw the data. Then we'll check in the second point a basic example by ChatGPT. So I ask ChatGPT, show me an example of test containers Java framework, and he answers, test container is a Java library that supports JUnit test, providing lightweight throwaway instance, nanani. And then he explains which dependency we need, this one, org the test containers and artifact ID test containers. It gives also the Gradle dependency. Then he gives the first example, which does not interest me, but this one interests me. So you put the at test annotation from JUnit, and then you define your resource from your container. Thanks to this class that will bind your code to the database provided in the container, and then you start your container database. Then you get the URL from this class that is bound to this database, and then you can connect to the database and do whatever you want, select, delete, insert, update on your database. Okay, then we will demonstrate my application that do a simple Spring Boot app that execute find all, and insert in Postgre database, a local Postgre database. So let's check this. So I go, I will open show more option and git clone the URL of my repo is this one, dv-springboot-postgre. Okay, so I loaded the application. It should be here. Okay, it is here. I load the Maven project. I change my project structure to Java 17 because Lombok is not compliant with Java 21, and I use Lombok in my application. Then I clean install my Spring Boot app, by disabling the test. Clean install. Okay, I reload the application. And now I will run my application. I will show you some basic use case, like add a user, find a user by his name, and find all the user. So, okay, I go to Postman. I check if there is already some users. Send. There is already some users. There is 4 users. I will add some users. So it is with some automatic environment calculation variable. I send it. I added Neil. I added Sergey. I added Bill. So if I search, I check find all. Now I have all this result. If I search by name, Bill, I got by name Bill. So you have an idea of what my Spring Boot REST application is doing. I will show you the controller to have the ID. So get mapping, get customer by name, get customer, add customer. Okay, so we have demonstrated the basic app with a Spring Boot container. Now we will go on the testcontainers.com to convert our application in a test containers integration test able application. So at this URL which I give in the description, you can create a Spring Boot app that does test container integration test. So I have to copy this dependency. I go to the POM. I have already some dependency, but I have to add this one to be able to test with a test container. So this is for the database, to have a database, Postgre database in the container. And this is to have the ability to test with test containers. Then I get back to my tutorial. I add the dependency management to import all the stuff for testcontainers.com. Okay. I check if it builds. Okay. Then it explains here that you need an entity. I already got a customer entity. Then a repository. I got a repository that do find all, and all the generic method. Then you have to be careful, because when you use a database in a container, you have to provide a script to create the database. So here a script, and in my project, I have also a script that does the initialization of the database. Here it is. I create a role, then I create a schema, then I create the table with an ID and a name. Okay, and don't forget to add this property in your application properties. Then you need a REST API endpoint, so I got it. And then you need the test. So we will test it with REST Assure library. So I need to add this dependency in my POM. I add it here. I invent. I install. I get back to my explanation. And then we have the test, which is just here. I will copy it. I will copy the name, and we'll create this test. So I will explain it in IntelliJ. So I go to my project, I go to the test part. Here I create a new class, new Java class, Windows V, fast, add Windows V. This I do not need it. I indent. I reload my POM because I clean install it with the new dependency, but they are not loaded. So I reload. No, they are loaded. And so we'll explain this test. So you have a Spring Boot test random for the Spring Boot port definition. We use this also to get a port for testing. Then we have this Postgre, which will be our database with this PostgreSQL container. This is provided by the framework we are explaining. Then before the test, we start the database. After the test, we stop it. Here is to read the different information required for the database. So we have the URL, username, password, because our container, there is a database, but we need it to connect our app to this container database. So this will help to connect to the database. Then we auto-wire our customer repository that I import. Then before each test, we set the framework REST assure base URI with localhost and the port defined before. And then we delete all the data. Then we write our test, a JUnit test, with a should get all customer. So I import my customer. Then I've not the same DB schema than the one from the application. So I have to do some simple modification. Okay, and I think we're okay. So to use a test container, you need, for example, Docker desktop, and this will run our container. So I will launch our test containers integration test, and we should see in desktop, in Docker desktop, the containers starting. So here you see there is two containers. It is during the test, the execution of the test. And what says our test? It says it's not okay because I have not configured the endpoint. The endpoint is not the same, and so we will re-execute. So my desktop, Docker desktop will create will receive the container. Here they are, and in our IntelliJ, we will see the result of the test, which is green. Okay, so it is cool. We could do another test. Find by name should get Bill should get by name. Okay, I will add Bill, for example. Okay. And I save all customer, it's a list, okay. And then what I want is to get customer slash bill, and I should have one. Let's execute all the tests. I think I can execute only this test, like this, run. So we have no container in Docker desktop. We will have one container, okay. And then in the result of the IntelliJ test, what we will have should get by name, and okay, it's okay. We added a bill, and then we retrieve a bill from the container Postgres database. So it was this the demonstration of testcontainers.com for Spring Boot. And now we will conclude with some comments from Reddit. So I go to the Edge browser. So what do they say about it? Test containers testing with real dependencies. It also reduces the amount of testing code enormously. No more mocks. You see, I did a real call to database. I didn't mock anything, so it's a real advantage to test real things. Test containers made my life so much easier. Do people usually use test container in unit test? And they say integration test. So it's a good replacement for what we could use for your integration test. Literal game changer, another says. Previously, we used H2 for unit testing that required dealing with databases. Since test container, we can have a real MySQL. Okay, so all these comments are really positive. But I ask myself, it's okay for local testing on my machine to use the Docker desktop, but when I will have to use it on CI/CD, it will be another story. And here, I am jumping into building CI/CD, and my senior asked to never use test container ever, exactly because it doesn't make things easier, but more complicated. Actually, make things worse because you are supposed to run runner in privilege mode, which is unsafe. After realizing that, we went for all mocking solution. So maybe if I propose a test container in my daily job, they could answer me with such answer that for safety reasons you can't use it in this situation, and so you will have to use the usual mocking solution. And last comment, this is about somebody speaking about slow running integration tests in CI/CD, and this says H2 cause a lot of issue because it simply doesn't behave the same way. Test container is quite fast. It doesn't restart for every test. So you see, maybe there is safety reason, but you have to study the real corner case about safety with test containers. Maybe it's because the person doesn't know uh, really how to use it safely. But the real advantage is that you don't have to swap between a H2 in a staging environment with a real Postgres database in production environment, which could cause some issues. I'm suggesting avoiding slower technology for the integration test, and if test container satisfies that, then great. So to conclude, test container is a great solution to do tests with real databases, no more swapping, and it is above all really quick. So you can do real test and quick test. Okay, that's all. So thanks for watching, and see you in next video. Bye.